Over a dark Florida sky in 1948, two airline pilots saw a blazing shape rush past their cockpit in seconds. It was close enough to feel impossible, and far enough to leave only questions behind. The encounter happened in the early age of commercial flight, when air travel still carried the romance of speed and the fragility of uncertainty. In that era, a strange sighting from a cockpit could shake the public imagination. On the night of July 24, 1948, the aircraft was crossing the southeastern United States on a routine passenger run. The route was ordinary. The sky, according to the men aboard, was anything but. Captain Clarence Chiles and First Officer John Whitted were experienced enough to know the difference between a distant light and something that seemed to occupy the same airspace. Their report would become one of the most discussed airliner cases of the post-war era. They later described a long cigar-shaped object with a brilliant blue-white glow and a fiery tail. It did not drift like a balloon or blink like another aircraft. It appeared to move with purpose. What made the sighting unforgettable was the brief but vivid geometry of it. The object seemed to have a row of windows or ports, and one witness thought he saw a burst of flame from its underside. The pilots claimed the object crossed ahead of them, then climbed away at a speed that left no time for easy explanation. In a matter of seconds, the sky had offered them a machine that did not fit the moment. Their passengers did not share the same clear view, but the crew's account was detailed enough to draw immediate attention. Soon after landing, the report moved from a private shock to a public investigation. This was the late 1940s, when military and civilian authorities were already trying to understand a growing number of unusual aerial reports. Every new case seemed to ask whether the sky was hiding something modern. Aviation had not yet named. The Chiles-Whitted account stood out because the witnesses were not casual stargazers. They were trained observers, accustomed to weather, traffic, and the disciplined routine of flight. That matters because the case rests on more than wonder. It rests on timing, speed, shape, and the uneasy certainty that both men saw the same extraordinary thing from the same cockpit. Investigators also had to reckon with the object's reported behavior. It was not simply bright, it appeared structured, moving in a way that suggested control rather than random motion. The most compelling detail may be the combination of speed and proximity. A distant light can be mistaken, but something that flashes past a cockpit at close range forces the mind to search for a different category. Another detail that keeps the case alive is the consistency of the descriptions over time. The shape, glow, and sudden disappearance remained central whenever the story was retold. Supporters of the extraordinary interpretation see a craft that behaved like technology ahead of its era, or perhaps not of human origin at all. The witness language in that reading sounds less like confusion and more like recognition of something unfamiliar, but real. That reading grew stronger because the report did not stay isolated. The case entered the wider post-war conversation about strange objects in the sky, where military files, newspaper accounts, and private testimony began to overlap. Still, the conventional possibilities deserve a fair hearing. Atmospheric effects, meteors, or a misread aircraft can sometimes produce startling impressions, especially at night and at speed. Some researchers have suggested that a fireball or bolide could account for the brilliance and motion. Yet the reported shape, the apparent structure, and the crew's sense of controlled movement remain difficult to fold neatly into that idea. Others have wondered whether the men saw an experimental aircraft or some kind of atmospheric illusion amplified by stress and darkness. That explanation keeps the case within human technology, but it still leaves the witness descriptions unusually specific. What continues to unsettle the case is the way the details lock together. The glow, the tail, the apparent windows, the sudden climb. Each element alone might be explainable, but together they create a stubborn shape. The official interest in the report gave it additional weight because it was treated as more than a campfire story. Once a case enters the files, it becomes part of the record of what could not be quickly dismissed. Yet records can preserve uncertainty as well as certainty. A file may confirm that something was seen, while still leaving the deeper question untouched. What exactly crossed that cockpit window? That question is why the encounter still resonates decades later. It captures a moment when trained airmen looked into the night and encountered a presence that seemed to outpace ordinary explanation. The story also belongs to a larger human pattern. We trust the sky because we must, yet the sky keeps reminding us how little we can hold on to for certainty. A single encounter can disturb that trust in an instant. For believers, the case suggests that something intelligent may have passed through the airspace of a commercial flight and left only a fleeting signature. For skeptics, it remains a remarkable but imperfectly explained wartime-era report. What is hardest to dismiss is the human certainty in the telling. Chiles and Whitted did not sound like men inventing spectacle. They sounded like professionals trying to describe an event that outran their vocabulary. That is where the mystery deepens. When a credible witness reaches for ordinary language and still cannot make the experience ordinary, the gap between seeing and understanding becomes the real story. The most enduring cases are rarely the ones that supply easy answers. They are the ones that leave behind a precise memory, a troubling shape, and a silence where certainty should have been. The Chiles-Whitted Encounter remains one of those silences. A bright object, a close pass, a sudden climb, and two trained observers who insisted they saw something real. Even now, the case sits between categories. Not enough to prove a visitor from beyond, not easy to reduce to a simple mistake. That tension is exactly why it still holds the imagination. Perhaps the answer was a rare atmospheric event, perhaps an unusual aircraft, perhaps something far stranger. The record does not close the door, and the night over Florida never quite gives back what passed through it. What remains is the feeling that the pilots saw more than a light in the dark. They saw a brief interruption in the familiar order of the sky, and that is why the encounter still lingers.